Strategy versus tactics. In our attempt to make sense of the world, we often conceive strategy as a carefully designed plan, meticulously laid out beforehand to direct the course of future events. However, this is a bit of an illusion. Often, strategy emerges in hindsight, with understanding of a situation or event only after it has developed, serving as a narrative we construct to explain how things unfolded. We might draw up grand strategic plans, yet the reality unfolds as it does, regardless of our intent. We often think that we control the future with a plan, or a strategy. But in reality, we mostly use these strategies to explain what already happened. We make big plans, but things will happen the way they will. When the outcome aligns with our initial plans, we are quick to claim victory, attributing success to a well-executed strategy. However, the truth is that we frequently adjust our so-called established strategies to fit the results we've attained. We reshape our narrative, retrofitting the strategy to match the outcome. It is not the foresight of strategy but the flexibility and adaptability in our tactics that truly steer the course of events. In other words, if things go as planned, we say our strategy was successful. But usually, we just change our strategy to make it look like it worked out. So, it's not about the original plan, but about how we adapt along the way. Let's consider the U.S. federal policy example of prohibition. The Volstead Act, enacted in 1920, was a strategy devised by the federal government to tackle the societal problems associated with alcohol consumption such as crime, domestic violence, and health issues. The idea was straightforward: outlaw alcohol, and these problems will decrease. The plan was rigid and uncompromising. However, as prohibition was enforced, it became evident that the strategy was failing to meet its objectives. Instead of reducing crime, it led to a boom in organized crime syndicates who capitalized on the high demand for illegal alcohol. Public health issues didn't subside; instead, many people died or suffered severe health issues from consuming poorly made, unregulated alcohol. Moreover, the federal government lost a substantial amount of tax revenue that had previously been levied on the alcohol industry. Despite these clear signs that prohibition was not working as intended, the federal government rigidly stuck to its initial strategy for 13 years, leading to unintended adverse consequences. It was only in 1933 that the strategy was finally adjusted with the repeal of prohibition via the 21st Amendment. This historical example showcases the potential repercussions of adhering too rigidly to an initial plan at a federal policy level. There aren't many things in life that are truly worth doing. When we make a plan, we often believe in an idea that we can change something, that our actions matter, and that our goals are the right ones. Even though this might not be true, we still believe it because it gives us a reason to keep going. We need to understand that these plans are just ways we see the world. Their real value is not in whether they're right or wrong, but in how they motivate us to act and move forward. When we set a goal and choose a strategy to reach it, we should always remember that things won't go as planned. The idea that we can predict what's going to happen in the world is a complete illusion. The world is always changing and we can't predict what will happen next. Consider the example of Blockbuster, a once dominant force in the video rental industry. When digital streaming services such as Netflix began to emerge, Blockbuster had a choice to adapt their strategy or stay the course. They believed in their brick-and-mortar model, thinking people would continue to value physical rental experience. They saw the world through the lens of their successful past, which was marked by their established retail locations and late fee revenues. Blockbuster's executives had a plan and a goal: to remain the dominant player in the movie rental industry, and they were convinced their strategy was the right one. They believed they could control the market and predict consumer behavior based on their past success. This illusion of control and predictability made them resistant to the emerging trends in the industry. Unfortunately, the world did not follow their plan. As internet speeds improved and streaming technology evolved, consumers started shifting towards online streaming. Netflix, once a small DVD-by-mail service, adapted to these changes and established itself as a dominant player in the video streaming industry. Blockbuster, unable to adapt to this change, filed for bankruptcy in 2010. The company's firm belief in their plan, its resistance to change, and its reliance on the illusion of predictability resulted in its downfall. The company didn't value the emerging trend of online streaming and was not motivated to adjust their strategy, leading to its demise. If it ever seems like we can predict things, it's either by lucky chance or an illusion created by looking back at what has already happened. Our understanding of the past can often trick us into thinking that we knew it would happen all along, even when we didn't. Further, insisting on sticking with the original strategy often leads to disastrous outcomes. Not realizing the impossibility of exact planning can cause entire systems to fail. Yes, many things in the world may seem well thought out, planned, and functioning for years, but that's not the case. This impression is usually a result of us looking back and reconstructing the original strategy. If strategic planning does succeed, it's merely a happy and rare coincidence. Denying these truths can lead to bad consequences. If a strategy doesn't work out as planned and you confront the strategist about it, they will likely point to unpredictable factors that hindered the execution of the plan. We're talking about complex plans here, not something as simple as planning to watch a movie tonight, although even such plans often need adjustments. It's a common theme: unpredictability is part of life. That's why strategies often change and adapt. Even the best laid plans can be thrown off by unexpected events. And it's okay, because learning to adjust and adapt is part of the process. That's where tactics come into play, helping us navigate the unpredictable waters of reality. One historic example is the Vietnam War, where the United States' original strategic plan did not account for the unpredictability of the conflict and the perseverance of the Viet Cong. The U.S.'s initial strategy focused on deploying a large number of troops and using superior firepower to achieve a quick victory. However, the reality of guerrilla warfare, unfamiliar terrain, and the determination of the Vietnamese forces resulted in a war that lasted much longer and had far higher costs than predicted. Another historic example is Napoleon Bonaparte's disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. The French emperor's strategy was based on a quick defeat of the Russian armies and forcing Tsar Alexander I to sign a peace treaty. However, the Russian strategy of scorched earth and continuous retreats, combined with the harsh Russian winter, led to severe logistical issues for Napoleon's Grande Armée. The rigid adherence to his original plan and underestimation of the unpredictability of the Russian climate and military strategy led to a catastrophic retreat and the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. In both these examples, the illusion of predictability and control, combined with an overconfidence in the initial strategic plans, led to disastrous consequences. Despite the apparent hindsight that these strategies were doomed to fail, at the time, both were seen as sound based on the understanding and past experiences of those involved. Only in retrospect, it became clear that more flexible tactics and an acceptance of unpredictability might have led to different outcomes. These historic examples underscore the importance of adaptable tactics over rigid strategies in the face of an unpredictable reality. Tactics is the true queen of strategy. It has the power to modify the original plans, making necessary alterations while attempting to stick to the initial direction. Yet, sometimes it even alters the direction itself, all for the sake of tactical objectives. The strategy sets the course, but the tactics navigate the ever-changing tides, making adjustments to keep the ship sailing forward. This dynamic interplay between strategy and tactics represents the heart of effective planning. It's not about rigid adherence to the initial strategy, but rather about having the flexibility to adapt as circumstances change. In this sense, tactics has an uncanny power to transform the grandest of strategies, making it fit for the real world, where unpredictability rules. Interestingly, people often value integrity and commitment to the original plan. They even confront each other with accusations of inconsistency when plans change. It's as if sticking to the original plan, no matter what, has become a virtue in itself. This perspective seems oddly rigid, given the ever-changing nature of our world. One might argue that what should be valued more is flexibility and the ability to adapt plans according to changing circumstances. Rather than viewing change as a sign of inconsistency, it should be seen as a reflection of responsiveness to real-world situations. A plan that evolves with time isn't a sign of weakness, but of practical wisdom and adaptive strength. The Cuban Missile Crisis provides a profound example of how flexibility and adaptation of initial plans could potentially save millions of lives. In 1962, The discovery of Soviet missiles in Cuba led the U.S. to the brink of nuclear war. The Kennedy administration's initial strategy was a direct military invasion. Yet, as the crisis unfolded, the tactics significantly shifted. Understanding the catastrophic outcome of their original plan, the Kennedy administration instead decided to implement a naval blockade around Cuba, a less aggressive yet firm tactic. This allowed time for negotiation with the Soviet Union and eventually led to a peaceful resolution of the crisis. Choosing a strategic direction is, of course, very important, and it should involve serious considerations and constraints. This is because without constraints or a clear direction, even the best intentions can lead us astray. It is as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This proverb highlights the potential pitfalls of pursuing goals without carefully considering the broader implications or potential unintended consequences. The sentiment reminds us that even with the best motives, our actions can lead to negative outcomes if they aren't guided by a clear, well-thought-out strategy. At the same time, this strategy needs to be flexible enough to adapt to the unpredictable realities we encounter along the way. When planning strategically, it's crucial to remember that we live in an imperfect and unfixable world. We, as imperfect beings in this imperfect world, should be cautious about assuming our own infallibility, especially at the strategic planning stage. It's not wise to believe that we are always right and others are wrong, or to judge others too hastily. Especially, we should be wary of attempting to restore justice, as many of the greatest injustices are carried out with the aim of restoring perceived fairness. The world is complex, and our understanding of it is inherently limited. The first step in wise strategic planning is acknowledging our limitations and being open to the fact that our perspective, though unique and valuable, is only one of many. An example from history that embodies the peril of rigidly attempting to restore perceived justice is the Treaty of Versailles. After World War I, the Allied powers imposed this treaty with the intention of ensuring fairness and preventing future conflicts. Germany was held primarily responsible for the war and was required to make hefty reparations. The treaty aimed to restore justice and balance. However, it only fueled resentment and economic hardship in Germany, setting the stage for World War II. What seemed a fair solution ended up causing one of the biggest injustices in human history. When we engage in strategic planning, it's key to understand that most human motivations are driven by instinctual intentions. These instincts are often hidden beneath a thick layer of justifications and philosophies, obscuring their true nature. We mustn't blindly follow these natural intentions, as they are largely blind themselves, shaped by evolutionary and biological objectives that may not align with what we consciously perceive to be our own goals. For instance, let's take the urge for competition. It may instinctively drive us to strive for the top position in a business environment. This drive, deeply rooted in our evolutionary past, might push us to make decisions that, on the surface, appear to advance our career. However, without careful consideration, these decisions could compromise our work-life balance or relationships. While our instincts were aiming for survival and dominance, as they were designed to do, the conscious us might value harmony and personal happiness more. This disconnection underlines the importance of being aware of our deeper motivations when planning strategically. The cornerstone of strategic planning lies in adhering to the fundamental principle of respecting Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. This pyramid, theorized by psychologist Abraham Maslow, outlines the sequence of human needs, starting from the most basic physiological needs and escalating to the need for self-actualization. In a world ripe with inconsistencies, this model of human needs provides a reliable compass for shaping our strategies. Any plan that is conceived without considering the fulfillment of these innate human needs is doomed from its inception. It's paramount that our strategies not only align with these needs but are crafted to facilitate their attainment. Whether it's ensuring physical safety, fostering a sense of belonging, or supporting individual growth towards self-fulfillment, our plans must be rooted in this understanding. Ignoring or violating these fundamental needs in the pursuit of strategic goals sets a course for failure, as it neglects the very essence of what it means to be human. A historical example of this can be found in World War I. National leaders on all sides had strategic plans that relied heavily on patriotic fervor and the ideology of nationalism to convince vast numbers of people to go to war. Yet these plans often overlooked or even violated the basic human needs outlined in Maslow's hierarchy. At the most fundamental level, the physical safety of soldiers was often treated as expendable in the pursuit of strategic objectives. This disregard for basic human needs resulted in a horrifying loss of life and sparked severe disillusionment among the soldiers and civilian populations alike. On a higher level, the psychological needs for a sense of belonging and esteem were exploited to promote loyalty to the nation and willingness to fight. However, as the war dragged on and the reality of the trench warfare became apparent, the damage to soldiers' mental health became clear. The rates of post-traumatic stress disorder and other psychological illnesses skyrocketed among veterans, indicating that these human needs were not being met. In the end, the war resulted in widespread devastation and led to significant social and political upheaval. Many historians argue that the disregard for basic human needs in the strategic planning of the war was a significant factor contributing to these outcomes. This example illustrates the potential consequences of strategic plans that violate Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Consider the historical case of the company towns established in the early 20th century, during the height of the Industrial Revolution. Corporations would build entire communities around their factories, providing housing, stores, and services for their workers. These strategic plans were focused on economic efficiency and control, but they often overlooked essential elements of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. While the most basic physical needs, like food and shelter, were taken care of, the company towns frequently neglected higher-level needs such as a sense of community or opportunities for personal growth. This disregard led to numerous strikes and protests, as workers were left feeling exploited and dehumanized. In the end, many of these company towns failed or were abandoned, as their strategic plans were fundamentally flawed by the disregard for human needs. In a different realm, certain social media platforms offer another illustration. While the initial strategy of creating a connected global community seems to fulfill the needs of belongingness and love, there have been unintended consequences. As these platforms have evolved, they have often neglected the higher-level needs of esteem and self-actualization. For instance, the emphasis on likes and followers can undermine self-esteem, leading to feelings of inadequacy. Meanwhile, the algorithms that favor sensational content can stifle self-actualization by promoting conformity rather than individual growth and discovery. This has led to widespread criticisms and even calls for major reforms in the industry. Here again, we see the pitfalls of strategic plans that don't adequately account for Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In strategic planning, a principal aim is to prevent conflict, recognizing that each person holds their own version of truth. There should be no coercion, only a natural alignment of plans with existing human behavior. Instead of introducing extraneous regulations or incentives, we must endeavor to orchestrate systems where it is almost instinctive for people to act in the desired manner. The emphasis should be on functionality and simplicity. Error is a distinct possibility in any strategy, but the goal is not to be flawless. Rather, the objective is to create a system where not a single person's needs are infringed upon. It's not about constraining human behavior, but about channeling it in a way that supports the overall strategic objectives while also respecting individual needs and freedoms. This human-centered approach forms the backbone of an effective strategy, one that promotes cooperation instead of conflict, and progress instead of stagnation. When it comes to tactics, functionality and rationality take precedence. The key is to minimize harm in the present, recognizing that tomorrow may bring unforeseen circumstances. Tactical decisions should be driven by the immediate needs and conditions, focusing on practicality rather than long-term strategies. The ever-changing nature of the world demands that tactics be adaptable and responsive to the current environment. By prioritizing the minimization of harm and making decisions based on the present reality, we can navigate through uncertain times more effectively. This approach allows us to seize opportunities, mitigate risks, and optimize outcomes in the short term, while remaining open to adjustments and revisions as the future unfolds. In this way, tactics serve as a pragmatic tool to ensure the best possible results in the here and now, acknowledging that tomorrow's landscape may be entirely different. The interplay between strategy and tactics is a delicate balance that requires careful consideration. While strategy sets the overarching direction and goals, tactics provide the practical means to navigate the ever-changing landscape. It is crucial to recognize the limitations of strategic planning, as the world is complex and unpredictable. Rigid adherence to an initial plan can lead to disastrous outcomes, hindering adaptability and stifling innovation. To achieve success, We must embrace a holistic approach that integrates the wisdom of strategy with the agility of tactics. This requires understanding the fundamental human needs and ensuring they are not compromised in the pursuit of strategic objectives. Flexibility, responsiveness, and a willingness to adjust course are essential qualities in navigating the uncertainties of our world. Ultimately, effective planning requires an open mind, the ability to learn from past experiences, and a commitment to continuous improvement. By embracing the dynamic interplay between strategy and tactics, we can harness the power of both and navigate the complexities of contemporary challenges with confidence and resilience. Let us remember that it is not the rigidity of our plans that guarantees success, but rather our capacity to adapt, innovate, and honor the ever-changing needs of individuals and the world at large.